Hello and welcome back to our series where we are building a people and culture management system, particularly our compensation dashboard. This series is brought to you by Prairie HR Solutions. My name is Jake Finger, founder and principal consultant here at Prairie HR Solutions. And in this video, I want to take what we've done and add one more level before we call this complete. At least this dashboard here. Once we get this complete, we can work on our market salary, our market study information, and compare it to our compensation structure. So what we have now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about or where we got this thing, please go back and watch the previous videos. We built this from scratch, and essentially up to this point, I highly advise you to go back and watch that so you know what's kind of going on and what we'll be talking about in this code. So what we have here is we have a initial filterable dashboard here. So this is all of our employees. We can either filter by division or job title. Now remember, this is all employees that fit the comp specialist job title. And then the same thing with the state. This is all the people in the company that exists in Texas and all that. So then what we did was we allowed our users to select a division and then lock that field. So it's only showing everybody here in finance. And then what we were able to do is repopulate these drop-down boxes with only the finance division data. And I know you can't see our drop-downs here because it's kind of existing off this page. It's just the way that we're having to share our screen. I apologize about that. If you're following along though, you should see exactly what I'm talking about. And the idea is now you could filter based specifically on the new populated data. So this is all job level 2s within finance. This here is all the accountants only within finance. And then it populates the rest of our data down here as well. And when you come over here to our employees, you can only see the employees within finance. You're not seeing the whole company wide. So that's cool. So that is our second level. So now what we want to do is create a third level. And when you're thinking about cascading either drop downs or filters, filtering it down to the second level is fairly simple and straightforward. When you get into the third level and beyond, it becomes, at least in my opinion, exponentially more complex, because now you're having to deal with not only the original, but now this one and this one. And we're going to stop after we get done filtering with the job title. We only have 500 employees in this organization. Now, if we had, substantially more, like 30,000 or even more, then we may need to filter down a little bit more or even add fields like maybe city or whatnot. But for our purposes, we're just going to stop at job title. And the intent of this filter is we want to be able to go to, say, our finance coordinator within our finance division, lock that, have this gray out and disabled just like this, and then populate these fields. And then when the user selects something in this field, we then want it to change it. So you see right now we don't have this built out yet. So this may be a 2-level, a 2-episode piece. We'll have to see how it goes. I think what we're going to do right now is just build the structure, and then the next episode we will build the functionality or attach that functionality to a structure. So first, let's tackle this piece. So we have 2 buttons, and each one of these buttons fires the same exact function, and that function grabs whichever button did it and then runs an if statement. And that if statement has a nested if statement depending on what's going on. So let's just jump right into our code here. So what I did first was I went over to our HTML page, and this used to be comp div lock. I changed the name to comp filter lock because it's not just going to be locking the div, it's going to be locking multiple. So I changed that name there. And now that we're incorporating a second switch, and that second switch we have indicated right here. In fact, we can just grab this and get this out of that initial if statement, like so. That way it's accessible outside of the if statement. Now that we have this second one, we're going to have to build onto this. So if the div, this happens if the switch that caused this function to run is the comp div switch. So we'll have to do this over again for our job check switch. And you'll see what I mean here in a second. But what we need to do is we need to add a scenario here. So if the div check is set to true and the comp job check switch is set to false, that means it's not clicked, then we want to run all this. And at the end of this, you'll see, well, first you'll see that we reset everything. And then you'll see that we run this function. Now this function, this was a helper function that we built, but I'm not sure we really need this. We may need it in the future, but it's going to look a little different. But what we can do is simply grab this and just replace the contents here. And then that will take care of that. Because what we're also going to need to do here is set that comp jobs, this comp jobs drop-down box, gray and disabled, just like we did here. We don't have that, so let's create that variable. Let's just call it get comp jobs. It's going to equal document get element by ID comp jobs. Okay, so now we can grab this element, this variable here, and do the same exact thing that we did here. Except we don't want it to be set to true or gray, we want it to be clear. And the reason we're doing this is we're creating essentially a default to where just in case we don't account for it, it's going to set it back to its default. Okay, good. So now this happens when the division check switch is clicked on and the check switch is clicked off. So now let's look at what we need to do if they are both clicked on. So we need to stay within this nested if statement here. And that nested if statement says else do this, but let's create a scenario for both of them being set to true. So now this is where you're going to have to do a little bit of imagination and kind of visualize what it is that you're wanting to have happen. So if both are set to true, we are going to want to reset some things, but we're not wanting to reset everything. You'll notice that when the div switch is checked to true, we don't reset that div, that comp div drop down. And when this job check is set to true, we don't want to reset the jobs because we want that value to stay there. But we do want to reset all the filters below it because we're going to repopulate that data. And then what we need to do is, so we can actually grab this and put this up here as well. Okay. And what we're going to want is all this stuff again. So now we want the division to be true, and we want the jobs drop down to be true. And we want true. And we want this to be gray for now. So now this happens when it is the div check switch that fires it. So now what we're going to need to do is actually do something when this job check switch occurs. So we only have two switches. So we could just simply use this else button, because really, if it's not this one, it's got to be this job check switch. So we could just leave this as the default, but let's not. Let's actually not, so you can follow along and see what is actually happening. And then else, we can just leave this blank. Yeah, we'll just leave the else. It just does nothing. Okay, so if the check switch is actually not the division, but the job check switch, now let's think about what it is that we want to have happen. The first scenario we have is this. So let's add that to our if statement here, and we will indent this over to keep it clean. So if we click this and say it is untrue, or say it was on false, or say it was true and then we clicked it off and this is still true, what do we want to do? We want to reset all this, yep. And then we want to keep the comp division true, that gray, that false. Okay, good. And then we also want to run our division drop downs. So this will update everything. And then what we need to do is grab this, and this is going to be right here. So now if they're both set to true, so if this division box was set to true and then that was false and now it's set to true, then we want to reset everything here and put them both to true. Now the interesting thing is yeah, we're going to have to look at this, because I think what we're going to do is we're going to create ourselves an unfixable situation that we'll have to address. But let's save this and then go back here and see what actually occurs here. Because as we're testing it, we'll probably find more and more things that come up that we'll have to address, more scenarios that we're not initially thinking of. All right, so let's run this. Let's make sure everything's loaded, that we're not making anything kind of screwy. Let's do the executive branch. Okay, that's fine. Actually, let's give something a little bit more. Let's do marketing. If I remember right, there's quite a few, 73 people in marketing. So let's lock this. Okay, and then this should update. And it looks like it does. So now let's click Com Specialist. Now, when we click this, this should lock and turn gray. Okay, and it does. Now the challenge is okay, so we can still switch it. That's good. That's what I was worried about. So we can do Let's do internal affairs. Lock it. Okay, good. So now what's happening is our drop downs here are being reset with its default, but they're not being populated, which, we haven't told it to do that yet. So now let's see what happens when we only click this one. Now remember, this is going to be set to false. This is going to be set to true. So it should reset everything. Okay, so it didn't reset that. So when this is false, that's true. We need to reset it. So let's come back here and say, when we click this button, if that is true and that is false, it does that. And then when this is true and that is true, it does that. But the one thing that we're missing is the situation in which this is false and the comp check switch is true. Or since we're going to do the same exact thing, well, let's take care of this first. So if this gets switched to false, then we're going to reset everything. We're going to need to reset all job. We're also going to need to reset all of our jobs. Reset all of our jobs here. World. Okay, well, that didn't work. I'm going to reset, copy. There we go. Reset all of our jobs. And then we are going to set our comp division to false, this to nothing, that to nothing, and that to false. And we should do the same exact thing if they're both set to false, because we have true, false. You probably remembered this from school, way back when or whenever it was that, your logical statements. You have true, 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 false, false, true, false, false. So we essentially need to have 4 different situations here. But if we're going to do the same exact thing here, identical, instead of writing another if statement, we can simply just do or comp job check switch equals false. And then that'll take care of if our division is set to false and our job check is set to true or false, then we do this. And then else it's going to unlock the comp division. And when we unlock our comp division, this is when we start populating everything. Yep, because this is when we start populating everything. So we'll have to come down here and grab this stuff. But okay, so let's save this and see if we just get that structure situated with the gray and the disabled and whatnot. Okay, so let's come back over here and we will refresh this. Okay, good. Loads. Let's do operations. We haven't done operations in a while. Populates. We have 76. We lock this. Grade, not grade. Good. And it should update only the things that we have here. Yep, let's do operations analyst. Okay, good. So now, if we were to select this, it should be gray and lock, gray and lock, gray and lock. Now, if we were to unselect this, it refreshes it, stays. This goes back to our operations specialist filtered, or our operations filter, which is good. Lock it, good. Now let's unlock everything. Okay, good. Okay, so this isn't populating because we haven't told it to. And then that should reset everything. Okay. And then let's lock everything. Let's lock this and do that fourth check, which is that, and good. Okay, so we got the functional or the structure done. So there's a little bit of cleanup that we're going to have to do here. Let's go to this marketing. Voila. This populates it. We have a website developer. So we have a couple here. We lock it. And what we're going to want to have happen now is you'll notice that these have been reset, but they actually haven't been populated with anything. So we're going to need to populate that. But first, what we need to do is we now have 1, 2, 3, 4, but then we're also going to need those same situations here. So if and again, we'll get this functional and then we'll go through and clean it up and see what we can trim down. So we have true, false. Then we have true, true. Now we need false or switch equals false. Okay, so now what we want to have happen when essentially this gets checked is going to be essentially all this right here. Just kind of need to do the same exact thing. And we'll be able to clean this up. I'm already seeing ways that we can clean it up, but let's just get it all built first. Okay, so, and then we have this else thing. So this else essentially ran this unlock comp division. And that is this. We actually don't need this anymore. Let's just get rid of that. Function's gone. So this unlock comp division took our comp division value, which is that division drop down box. Really all I did was I took, I just seen that it was still trying to load over to this page. I essentially took the scenario that was false and true or false, false, and copied it down here to where our job check switch was triggered. And what we're looking at now is this unlock comp division. This unlock comp division takes that division value, I believe. Nope, it just takes the comp division and does something to it. So it comes down here and it takes the comp division, and then when it unlocks it, it sets it to disabled and sets the division background, and then it resets everything. But then it runs this pop comp DD. So let's look at this here. So what we're going to need to have happen when this is set to true and this is set to false, it runs all of this, and then it runs this filtered comp DD and gets the filtered drop down. So this takes care of the drop down from division. Okay. And then here, when the comp, if the comp switch is set to true, and the job switch is set to true, what we're going to need to do here is run a code to populate the DD from job title. Okay, so that's just a little place here that we can try and put a little reminder here. And then if it's false or true and false, then what we need to do is run this unlock comp division, which essentially resets everything. So what we could actually do here is come up here and grab our comp jobs pieces, which it looks like we already have. A lot of redundancy here, but that should take care of it. And then it resets the division, the jobs, the filters, this, and then it repopulates our original. We'll say this is our original drop down value. Okay, good. So now anytime that we need to essentially fire this from our division piece here, from this, anytime that we need to reset anything, we don't really need to do this. We just need to come down here and do that. Now I'm looking at this, and I don't think we really need to reset any of this either, because if we're resetting everything, then that should take care of it. So we don't need this anymore. Well, we can leave that there for now. We'll do a cleaning, because really this is the only way, the only other options that we have. We don't have any other options. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get rid of this. Else it just does nothing. Okay, good. So let's check this structure here. And then if we get this structure down pat, then what I'll do is I will end our video here and we will build out the functions for this. And it is simply going to be just a copy and paste and kind of tweaking of data, if you will, to get this to work. Because we already have the code, we just need to tailor it. So let's do finance. Okay, that's finance. Let's lock finance. And then let's check on our accountants. We'll lock the accountants. That's locked. So now if we unlock this, it should unlock everything. And it does. I wonder if there's a way that we can change this switch to unchecked. Okay, so let's actually try that real quick before we get done with our video here. So let's look at when it is all unchecked. And what we can do is we need to come up here and grab these and put them down here in our helper function here. Because what we're going to want to do is also set this comp div check switch. We want to set that value to, or dot checked, if I can spell it right. Wow, there we go. And we want to set that value equal to false. And then the same thing with our comp job check switch checked. We want to set that to false. That should reset those. So let's save this. And we'll come back over here, refresh this, and this should take care of our structure. Okay, we'll pick facilities to do this. Populates lock. Let's pick maybe our project managers. Okay, lock. Good. Now our job drop downs are not doing anything because they've just been reset. So they're ready to be populated. So that's good. Now, if we were to unclick this, it should reset everything. Okay, it's not setting that. So we'll figure out what's going on with that the next time. That should be just simply kind of figuring out what's going on there. But everything else should be good. So let's go ahead and take care of that checkbox here real quick, just so we can say we're absolutely done with the structure and ready for data. So when we're over here looking at this checkbox here, so this variable is checked. So we need to remove that because we're not saying if it's checked or not. We just want to grab the variable and then set the checked. Okay, so let's save this and then let's come back over here and then refresh and see how that actually works. And then that should just uncheck everything. Okay, we'll check it. Now, if we uncheck this, everything should be reset. Yep, that did it. And populate. Okay, good. So now I'm not going to have y'all sit here and watch me do this, but essentially what we need to do is what we did up here with our comp division check. We just need to do the same exact thing down here. So I'm going to go through that and then clean up this piece right here. And then in the next video, we can actually start building out the functions to populate some data and filter some data and then populate that chart. So I hope this was informative. I'm excited to get this down to another level. And until next time, please take care.